Did FedEx give cops a Fourth Amendment loophole to spy on you? They sure did. Number one, how is this possible? Number two, how in the world is this legal? In this video, I'm going to break down how the company, FedEx, is now working with cops to spy on you, and how they have found a Fourth Amendment loophole to not only spy on you, but spy on everyone with their trucks. And then I'm going to point out the real company behind all of this and what they're doing to get away with it. So what's going on here? Well, recently, FedEx has started using high-powered AI cameras in order to be outfitted on every one of their trucks to protect themselves. It's essentially liability protection. The problem is they're not just using it to protect themselves, they're also sharing all of their data with law enforcement. Information like your license plate number, your make, your model, and the color of your car. But they're sharing even more than that. They're sharing specific information like dents on your car, bumper stickers on the back of your car, and the direction that you're driving. Why would FedEx do this? It's simple. FedEx has chosen to partner with a company that makes its profits by partnering with law enforcement agencies to provide surveillance. Flock Safety, a Georgia surveillance company, has specialized in providing license plate reading software as well as surveillance technology, and they've been doing this since 2014. They have one primary business model: to establish as many relationships with law enforcement agencies as they can so they can put as many cameras in as many cities on as many streets as they possibly can to create a nationwide surveillance program. To date, they have been very successful. They now have 40,000 cameras in 4,000 cities in over 40 states. So how did FedEx start caring about sharing information with the police? Initially, they didn't. FedEx only wanted Flock Safety to monitor its locations across the country. But under the deal, Flock Safety is requiring FedEx to share its surveillance feeds from its trucks with law enforcement. The crazy part, it is believed that FedEx is only one of 4 multi-billion-dollar companies that have agreed to a similar relationship. This sounds like a marriage made in privacy hell. Think about this for a minute. FedEx has agreed to share its surveillance feed with local law enforcement. And in exchange, local law enforcement is also agreeing to share its surveillance and any information they obtain with FedEx as well. Why would they all do this? Because Flock Safety is making money off of all of it. The bigger the mass surveillance network gets, the more Flock Safety makes money. The problem with all of this? Since when did the United States turn into the movie Minority Report, where the government can just put out any type of mass surveillance they want to in the hopes of creating a pre-crime unit to stop anyone who might just commit a crime? If Flock Safety gets what it wants as a business model, now you can have both government and businesses creating a mass surveillance system throughout the entire country where they can share and share alike between each other for whatever purpose they want. Look, I get it. Flock Safety sees an opportunity here to make money by giving cops something they couldn't get anywhere else: a Fourth Amendment loophole. Normally, under the Fourth Amendment to the United States Constitution, cops have to have a valid search warrant in order to run a mass surveillance operation. But private companies are not under the same limitations of the Constitution as the government is. So, if a private company can establish a mass surveillance network, run it, profit from it, and then turn around and sell the data to law enforcement, you now have given law enforcement a Fourth Amendment loophole. This Fourth Amendment loophole essentially allows law enforcement to run a modern-day Minority Report pre-crime investigation unit where cops can now monitor the general whereabouts and moving around of the general public without having to worry about constitutional violations. Now, we have seen this before. Police have always wanted to gain access to someone's Google search history or their internet surfing history, and more important, GPS data location about where your phone has been. The problem? Police often do not have adequate probable cause in order to obtain a search warrant in order to gain this information. So they established a workaround. They'll just buy the data and they'll buy the information from a private company. In 2018, the Supreme Court ruled in Carpenter v. United States that cops could not just collect cell phone location data without a warrant. So what did the government do to get around it? They started buying it in that exact same year from a brokerage company known as Ventel. In fact, Immigration and Customs Enforcement started buying cell phone users' digital location data from apps that were collecting location information. Apps like we all use, apps like weather apps, shopping apps, and video games. This, of course, led to phones being tracked and people being arrested. Cops then hid the fact that they actually obtained this information from a private broker by following behind a car that they had identified as having one of these phones, and then they would wait for them to violate some type of ticky-tack traffic violation and then pull them over. This pretext stopped based on speeding or an equipment violation would lead to the officer being able to place the driver under arrest, and now they could do an inventory search, and anything they found during that search could be used against the person in the car. Some people say, well, who cares? If you're doing something wrong, you deserve to get caught. The problem is this type of thing happens all the time. And unfortunately, sometimes innocent people are caught in the crosshairs. For example, Missouri State Police built a murder case against a babysitter. Now, supposedly, the victim's babysitter was the prime suspect, and the Missouri State Police decided they were going to build a case against her by purchasing data from a private broker, to try to show where her cell phone was and all the locations that she attended at or near the murder. The problem? She was innocent. It was learned later that it was the actual victim's wife who was the person responsible for the murder. You might ask, can I go buy this data and use it like the cops do? Nope. These data brokers like Ventel and Babel Street, they market and sell directly to the government. This crony capitalist arrangement allows these data brokers to sell large blocks of data, all paid for by your tax dollars. So, how can we stop all of this? There is court precedent for how this should be handled, but the U.S. Supreme Court needs to stop companies like Flock Safety from spying on all of us through mass surveillance by labeling them state actors. What is a state actor? Generally speaking, private companies are not subject to the same transparency requirements as government institutions. But in Cooper versus Hutchison, a federal district court held that a Missouri sheriff could be civilly liable for his purchasing of cell phone location data from a private company known as Securus. The court relied upon the fact that Securus's customers were all law enforcement, and they marketed and sold a product to law enforcement for the express reason of tracking people for criminal investigations. Because Securus was a willful participant in joint surveillance activity with the government, the court held that it could be labeled a state actor for Fourth Amendment purposes. In other words, the court ruled that a sheriff's use of a software company did not allow him to circumvent the Fourth Amendment, and as a result of that, he could be held liable. When vendors cater to law enforcement agencies and then work with them to monitor the movements of individuals, and then the government turns around and purchases that data from that company, it is much more likely they will be required by the courts to have had a search warrant. Unfortunately, until the United States Supreme Court classifies companies like Flock Safety and other companies that partner up with companies to aid law enforcement in surveilling citizens, until they are now labeled state actors, you can guarantee that this relationship is going to continue to take place just like it is right now at the Shelby County Sheriff's Department in Tennessee. This department has confirmed that they are actively partnering to snoop on everyone's vehicles and then share that data not only with FedEx, but other private companies. Sounds a little bit like China, doesn't it? It's not just Shelby County. Memphis, Greenwood, Indiana, League City, Texas. The list goes on and on. The scale of this surveillance is massive and extremely intrusive to each and every one of us. But here's the scary part. It's not just FedEx, it's also Kaiser Permanente, the largest health insurance carrier in the United States. Kaiser Permanente just signed up with Flock Safety to expand this mass surveillance network that is accessible to the government. To date, more than 1,800 law enforcement agencies have signed up with Flock Safety to expand this mass surveillance network, and they've only been in business since 2014. Flock Safety's website says that they use real-time data to, quote, enable and incentivize safer driving. Their ultimate goal here? To become, quote, the world's first fully digital insurance company for connected and autonomous commercial vehicles. This begs the question, does that mean that my car is collecting my data and my driving behavior and sending it not only to my insurance provider, but also law enforcement? Unfortunately, that is exactly what is happening. Don't believe me? Check out this next video where I break down how Congress's infrastructure bill will require all new vehicles to have tracking software for alcohol detection. See you over there.